am Babu Nair and I am the publisher of Banking Frontiers magazine, which I started way back in 2002. Started as a technology magazine for the banking sector. It became a business magazine for the financial services sector. We learned banking, we learned insurance, we learned capital markets, and then went on to launch our own video channel called as Banking Frontiers Live. And here we are today having conversation, and it turned out to be a boon now that we started off the video channel. So that is in short what my background is.
Hi, I'm Ashish Gupta. I am presently the CTO at Max Bupa. I, unlike you, haven't really learned anything yet. I'm still learning. I've actually had quite a few role and career changes. I started as a product manager, moved on to sales, moved on to business development, moved on to customer engagement, and then finally moved on to technology. And thankfully, I've been stuck with technology for at least about the last 8 to 10 years. So that's it. I handle most things digital at Max Bupa, and trying to figure out what to do next.
Fantastic. So learning is a constant thing. I mean, none of us have learned anything per se to say that we have learned everything. We are all constantly in the process of learning things. And that is where we are all. So let's go to Vinod.
I've recently joined HDFC Ergo. I head the data center infrastructure and operations and delivery. And prior to joining HDFC Ergo, I was associated with India Infoline Group, where I was responsible for all the strategic governance, innovations, digital movement, and the service delivery front.
What we intend to do today is basically we are in the process of identifying some of the most critical things that we do today, especially in the area of innovations, in the area of product development, in the area of technology, is that the world is transforming daily, and every second day there is an innovation that is coming into place. So when we are into such a world of constant innovation, essentially we can see that there has been a lot of requirement to transform these innovations into a instant platform. So what are the challenges you as the IT heads? On one side, you definitely have your, CIO, CTOs, not CIO, CTOs, your business heads sitting on your head to make sure that you instantly deliver these innovations and products to them. On the other side, you have your, compliance heads saying that, hey, hold on. Have you taken the necessary requirements, or have you taken the compliance requirements into consideration? So when you are grappling between this, what is your experience when you deliver these innovations to the people?
So yeah, I think, Babu, that's a very interesting question, and obviously a significant portion of all our times, I think, is going into handling that. I think the biggest challenge is fairly straightforward, and I think it's common whether you're in tech or business, is you have a set of resources, which is flexible, give or take 10-20%. But how do you optimize the utilization of those resources to give the highest bang for the buck? So how do you prioritize projects? So businesses are fragmented. There is operations, there's claims, there's sales, there are multiple things, and for every user, his or her own problem is the most important problem to solve, right? So how do you create a consensus around what's the top priorities for the company, ensuring that you use your bandwidth for the top priorities? How do you get alignment, especially on risk, saying, this is something that as a company we just can't do, and this is a bit of a gray area. We're willing to stretch the boundaries a little here, draw a little outside the line. As insurance companies, typically we don't have a lot of leeway because the regulations are fairly strict. But I think balancing that out is one of the biggest challenges, aggravated a bit further with the COVID scenario, because communication has become a slightly tougher problem than it was when everybody was in office. But yeah, to my mind, optimizing, ensuring you get the highest bang for the buck as far as your resources are concerned, and utilizing them for exactly the right project such that the company moves forward is I think, the biggest challenge.
Correct. And from your side, Vinod, you have been heading infrastructure on one side. You have looked at applications as well. what are the typical challenges you face when you deliver these innovations to the businesses, and on the other side the compliance is sitting asking you to check how to make sure that both these things are married properly?
So, Babu, there are multiple factors which actually get soaked into when you say the term innovation. In today's industry, when we say innovation, it looks very simple and it has a build of cosmetics everywhere. But in short, I could say, I mean, in the recent past, even I was interviewed for one of the sessions regarding the innovation, and it is fairly well, like, when you say innovation, then that it is a change that you bring in the organization, in the people, in the process, in the tool, and anything. And change comes with the pain, right? No one is ready to adapt that. People will be happy with copy paste, but if in case you say that there's a robo who can do that work, people have the mentality, okay, I'm going to lose my job, or what is that I'm going to do? I mean, people have that savvy mindset of doing something which is already been going on in the system. So one is the compliance one, which you already said, right? One is the innovation that actually we think about how do we digitalize, where do we see the company has to stand for the probably next 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years down the line? What is the priorities of the company? What is the turnover that we are looking at? And with whom are we looking forward to compete with? And most important factor is the security perspective, the IT security that I'm talking about. I'm inventing a solution. People from compliance will say it's not compliant with the regulatory body. The security people will say that there are some security problems through which this innovation, if in case we implement it, some firewall port or etc., something has to be opened, which is not going to help together. So I did face such challenges. The only thing that I could suggest is that uh, during coming across such situation, it is to collaborate with the people, to put the right thought process in place, to put the ideas, and instead of working in silos, I have always made sure that we have a team working together, and the ideas is passed through not only at the junior level but also at the senior. Sorry, I mean not only at the senior management level but even at the junior level, so that there is an acceptance in place. Instead of running from that innovation, people accept that fact that this is going to help us, right? So this it's a combination of basically people, process, and tool, which actually helps us to be a part of it.
Interesting. So one of the most important thing that comes to my mind is DevOps kind of things probably helps a lot in this kind of scenario. I think that this has been one of the most important strategies that has been adopted by many of the organization. Is it quite popular in the insurance sector as well?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Because a lot of DevOps processes, like for example, a simple example like a GitHub, often share data or are available in public, and there have been a lot of issues. Even though all of them are compliant in a way, the amount of energy it takes in convincing some of our own security guys and our own regulatory bodies internally becomes a lot. So somewhere, I mean, you'd find, at least my observation for the insurance industry is that it is very there's a walled garden. You build walls around your applications and make them very secure. So insurance by definition always remains very secure. But when it comes to DevOps, I don't think it's the most modern industry. I think we're trying to evolve. I think we're getting better every year. But I think compared to the modern standards that a lot of large scale startups use, I think this industry is far behind.
What is your perspective when it comes to DevOps as
Even it could be more largely to do with the finance sector wherein the NBFCs are working upon, right? However, from the insurance perspective, I don't see that to be much progressive effort enough to have a DevOps in place. Yeah, there are multiple applications layers through which you can build a robust security, and as Mr. Ashish rightly said, that we in the insurance sector, the security is too much robust, and there's hardly or rarely any chances of any infusions to get into place. However, DevOps really, I mean, that's somewhere becoming a veteran process altogether, a veteran story altogether, wherein you have a DevOps programming kind of a thing in place. There's, I mean, all these codings and so many other things are rightly available right in front of you right now. So having such a team, I'm not completely denying to have such a thing in place, but I think it's time to evolve and get the better, solutions and the technology in place.
So when it comes to delivering these insta strategies, what is this particular strategy that one has to put in place so as to reduce the turnaround time between the conceptualization and the delivery of that innovation in the right kind of scalable,
Yeah.
secure, and
Yeah.
Insta format.
So I'll tell you my biggest observation and learning through some of the last few years of my career. I think you've got to be very, very clear that if you're innovating, then by definition, you're uncertain of what you're doing. The whole point of doing an innovation is that it's not been done before. So the results aren't guaranteed. It's always innovation is a journey of experimentations. And in experimentations, you can't really overinvest because you don't really know whether they'll work or not. You can't overinvest in one. So my whole philosophy has been to figure out whatever is the least amount of work done to prove that the concept works. And once the concept works, then you can put in more and more resources, time, energy to then scale it up, make it absolutely secure, robust, foolproof. But I think I'm very, very happy with a 40-50% product as the first launch, as long as it as long as it helps me prove my hypothesis. And in that sense, I mean, kind of this LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman once said, right, that if you are not embarrassed by your first launch, then you've actually launched to date. So I still go by that philosophy. I still go by that philosophy that if you have an idea which is truly innovative, which is new, on which results aren't guaranteed, then the best thing to do is go live as soon as you can with the lowest amount of the product built, which is good enough to prove your hypothesis. And to me, that's the only way to do it.
Fantastic. Any perspectives, Vinod?
Yeah, same here, but a little different. Because for me, whenever there's a plan to have something innovated, or there's something anything that has to be launched, I always go with the strategy and the vision of the organization. Where exactly the current organization is standing, what is the vision, what is strategy. From the IT perspective, where do I see I can take this particular vision to that level of to support the organization is something which I would always look at. Coming to the launch part is something that what we build and what we decide, what we implement is a secondary factor. But the thing is that how do we plan? What is that I require? And what is that I'm really looking out for? So tomorrow, in case I say that I want to travel from Mumbai to Pune, how do I travel? By bus, by car? I have my own set of preferences, but I have to reach that particular destination. So, what is the best and the possible method or the right approach through which I can reduce on the cost? I can look for the right resources. I can do the right planning in place, and also the execution is built in such a way wherein all my risk and mitigation plan, everything is covered in the right approach. So only once, and secondly, even I should be able to understand that if in case I'm planning to implement a solution, is it going to give me the outcome? And if so, yes, what kind of outcome? Do we have any tracking mechanism? How do I track the success factor of those innovations that I've implemented? Uh, I mean, last year I went to one of the event where I was a moderator. I don't want to name that. And people from the international businesses reached India from outside the country. They never knew even how to track it. Like, they implemented AI. They never knew how to track the ROI. People did not have the understanding about how to gauge the performance. They did not have the idea about extracting the matrix to which they should be able to identify and reap the benefit which has come out of it, right? So implementing a solution, I mean, I can say that in the competition of in today's world, if my neighbor has a BMW, I can also buy a BMW. But am I really using it to the fullest? Today, iPhone and Samsung has their strong competition in the market. Everyone has the will of even I need an iPhone and everything. But how many people use it to the extent of using it? They spend lakh rupee, more than 1 lakh rupee and everything for iPhone. But do you see that really people are using it? So for me, what I believe is that if in case you want to invest, reap it to the best and give it back to the business, because today technology has become a backbone for any business, especially I could not say just the BFSI or insurance domains, but manufacturing, aviation, anything that you take up, technology has become a backbone to it. And any downtime with the technology is going to be having a major pain area for the delivery of the business. So I always feel, and I've always carried a thought process, in case there's any implementation to be done, take a cautious call. Money is always available with the business. They are ready to spend, but if in case you're not able to give it back to what you have implemented, then it's a total failure of trust and the confidence that the organization builds on technology.
As the custodian of technology, which is basically uh, the string between all the businesses and the profitability of the organization, the ROI is the most important factor that
Yes.
one has to keep a count upon.
Yeah.
And I have seen, even in my experience in various organizations, where AI is implemented in silos in across various channels. It can be a contact center, it can be a the branch, or it can be on an internet or an online sales or an online channel or whatever it is. And there is no, and each of them are siloed. There is no integration between them, which makes the actual use or purpose of this AI very difficult. Great. Now, just Ashish touched upon one very interesting thing, speaking about the concept of if you want to fail fast, and you want to, mend your ways. Okay. So essentially, there are two things. One is either there is a tweak, or there is a removal of the product from the ecosystem, replaced by something new. Okay, either of this is going to be very difficult if you don't have the right kind of structure in place, and it has to be done instantly, because ultimately today is a age of instant. So how can organizations make this process of either tweak or replacement a instant success, or at least do it with ease and with least amount of hampering to the business? What is your thought on this?
Look, I think on some of these things it's tricky because everybody has different perspectives, and especially when it comes to innovation, there's a lot of leap of faith, right? So one person may say it'll work, one person may say it'll not work, and both of them are very very valid in their arguments. So I think one of the most important things to do is have clarity on role, clarity on ownership, and then allow people to act with a little bit of freedom rather than trying to get a consensus all the time. So I'll give you an example. In my past, let's say in my previous job as the CTO of Policy Bazaar, there were a few innovations that we wanted to try. Right now, the big challenge is that businesses don't like disruption, and as Vinod rightly pointed out, people don't like change. Now we want to make tech enhancements which we believe will be very very valuable to the business. The operations guys are all smart, intelligent people. They have their own take on how they will drive productivity. So how do you get both of them together? And often it's not possible to get two teams together with different mindsets, different approaches. So the idea is you kind of figure out roles and avenues of working with some freedom. So, for example, in this particular example, what we did was we took a very small piece of the call center. So, if there are 3,000 people in the call center, we just took 20 people. And we went back to the business and said, leave these 20 people to us. Let us experiment with these 20 people. If our experiments work, we will come back to you, show you the results, and then you take it up from 20 to 3,000 people. So a lot of our innovations that we built around, especially around the calling mechanisms, like if you create a lead at Policy Bazaar, you will definitely get a call in 2 minutes. Right. All of those innovations that we did in automation, in assignment of leads, automation in leads, and there are plenty of those, were actually done keeping business in the loop, inputs, but not necessarily working with them on end-to-end execution. Because often getting an agreement there for 3,000 people is not difficult. Now the worst, now 20 people is hardly 3-4% of your or 5% of your entire base. If you get that wrong, um, you might get 1% sale dip because you did something wrong, which is quite absorbable for doing something that's transformation. And I think the same applies on the business side. I've known of projects that happen even at Max Bupa, and we're very very okay with that process where business directly deals with a third party provider and handles the tech bit also themselves. And our role as the central tech team is often to guide, advise, but not necessarily make it a blocker. So I think some level of freedom, some level of independence, some level of breaking the siloed mode is very, very critical, especially at an early stage. Now, once these experiments work, like I said, the handover needs to happen. The ops guys in the first example need to come in and ensure that the solution is scalable and will work and doesn't have risk. And similarly, in the other example, the tech folks will have to come in and say that again, this solution, while it works for this particular use case, will actually work for all use cases and integrates with our systems. So that's my take. Yeah, there has to be some experimentation, some freedom, some gaps.
You got to take some chances somewhere.
Exactly.
Excellent. Any perspective, Vinod, on this?
Well, I believe on the single window concept. So in the previous few organizations, I did a single window concept. So yes, there were teams, there were departments, there were business units who were working in silos with respect to now, for example, one team wants to implement a DMS. And after 2 months, I come to know some other department has come up with the requirement of a DMS. Someone looks at Oracle, someone looks at AI, someone looks at AI, machine learning, etc. Someone looks at chatbot, right? And then I came with the idea, end of the day, this centralized procurement of all this technology comes to me for final approval and everything. I said, what is it? I am heading this function. I don't know what is happening in the organization. And then finally, you have to get into the meeting with the management team and said, I do not want you guys to take individual decisions about your own teams. Rather, you let me know, because I have the skill set of gauging and understanding about the technologies which are emerging in the market, which is being currently managed by me or by the external market people, right? But in case such a requirement is coming, it should reach to me. I will have the right number of vendors being mapped or partners will be evaluated and everything. What used to happen is that they used to buy such products or solutions, and they used to get failed even because they do not have the expertise of gauging those things. They may only think from the business perspective, right? They may be looking for a 50 kind of report, and the vendor will say that I can generate 60 different reports. They will only try the experiment of 10 to 15 reports during the UAT phase. Things are perfectly all right. Implement the solution and get lost. But after that, no one evaluates that. So I have created a single window concept wherein all your technology, the solutions which needs to be implemented on your laptop, on your desktop, on the servers, on the or anything that you're looking as a solution which has to be implemented on the company's network itself, right? Which has to be accessed within the network or outside the network, it could go through the technology itself. So I used to gauge them and I used to bring those ideas together. So in case one team says that I want to have to handshake with XYZ company, for example, let me take Ashish's company, that my company organization says that I want to handshake with Ashish's company for some insurance handshake, right? But Ashish's company is not able to accept it because from their perspective, this particular solution is a failed one. They may be having some security issues, compliance issues, right? So getting both the parties together, understanding what are their needs, what is the expectation, and finally arriving onto a solution which will be rightly a parallel handshake for both the parties together will be a win-win situation for me. So I have, in this way, we have created a board council which meets monthly. I used to run a scrum call. That is every 2 days I do a scrum call and see what is the status of the current innovation that we are doing it. What is the future thing that we have proposed? Who are the vendors that we have proposed? And finally, those outcomes were discussed in the monthly board council meeting, wherein individuals from each business unit will join the discussion and he or she will share their fair ideas. And during that time, whatever debate and everything happened, at least earlier there were like too many email exchanges wherein people used to send email exchanges and debate on email itself. This is going to actually a roundtable discussion wherein you place your ideas, you debate it, you deny it, and finally whatever the majority says and whatever best outcomes come to the business, that particular solution is adopted. And during that time itself, you can say that it's spending with whom, it's finance, it's technology, it's testing, it's working, it's not working, reports and everything, and share the work across all the verticals, so that I am not just ending up with testing of 10 or 15 reports. I will test all the 60 reports and come with the final solution. That is, everything is working fine. Out of the 5 solutions, I'm look forward for the second or third solution with the optimized cost.
Interesting.
Right? And also the support that we are expecting from the partner is also equally important. What kind of support is that we are looking at? What is the metrics? How the support is going to happen? Where is it going to get hosted? Cloud, on-prem, connectivity, establishment, licenses, multiple things that has to be so once, only once the solution is finalized, then you can look at the architecture, whether it suits you on cloud, and how the entire cost factor works out.
Correct. And that is a very good strategy to put a single window to through which everything would pass. So at least you have the processes set in place. And
Yes,
now driving business outcome is basically the ultimate goal for any business leader.
absolutely.
And technology leader is the guy who catalyzes these business outcomes.
Yeah.
So while their processes are quite disparate, you are intermingling with each other.
Yeah.
And this concept of single window will probably make this intermingling much more cohesive, or probably a little more, uh, friendlier, and towards the organization, it would build up on the goal.
And also, what I've seen is that people who've not been talking to each other, or there is a disconnect between the decisions that people make, and they never would like to talk to each other over the call or over the email. But this is such a forum when you have to be a part of that, right? And it's a compliance thing that you have to be a part of that. When people come, they have to talk, right? So even if you do not like my face, or I do not like someone's face, but it's the organization that we are working on for, and they have to deliver what it is. So slowly and gradually, the personal grudges stay outside, and the real outcome towards to the execution works well.
Fantastic. One another thing is, whenever you develop any product or put any product up, ultimately there is no iota of compromise when it comes to security.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I think as a financial organization, each one of you would go with that philosophy.
Yeah.
Building grounds of security on the product, building grounds of compliance is something that has been a norm according to what Gartners of the world, actually recommend for any organization today. How have you been looking at ensuring that this grounds of security is built into at the clear, time of creation of the product or the innovation or whatever it is?
Why don't you go first this time?
So from security perspective, yes, it's always been a priority, not only for me. All the fintech organizations, or any organization you take in the current industry, looking at the way the attacks, or malicious thefts and everything is happening. Yes, there are challenges which we come across. Suddenly one day CISO comes and says, okay, everything is done, but you cannot go live with the product. You cannot go live with the innovation. There is a security catch, and the project is on hold. And then all the work starts again and again and again. So there have been instances where there is always a debatable situation wherein why do I need? So there's always a disconnect. There are some quarrel even. My go live date is just planned for next week. Everything is done, and finally you're coming. Something is not working. So as I said, the single window concept has helped me, because during which I have all the stakeholders in place. Because Babu, all these challenges I had faced in the initial starting days when you join any organization, right? They may be having their set of rules, policies, processes. People have their own mindset, execution. People don't want to work on weekends, and technology is a 24/7. You cannot have that mentality. No, I cannot work after 5 p.m. or 6 p.m.
Correct.
So many things, many challenges came into place. And with the single window concept, again, I would come on that, because during which I have technical, non-technical business teams, business analyst teams, supervisory teams, all this AI, machine learning, everyone used to come and join and say, okay, from security perspective, you tell me what are things that you would like to check on this part. I do not want, so basically a risk mitigation plan, the risk tracker, the transition plan, the user acceptance, everything is prepared with the, if in case tomorrow, in case someone says that it will take 2 days for him to test, or 3 days for the security team to do the vulnerability assessment, right? So penetration testing and everything. I said, okay, you say 2 days, I will give you 4 days, right? Come to me by the third or fourth day, I'll be happy, but I want to go live with the dates and so on. So it is, I've always found it reasonable to say to the business teams that you ask for extra dates, it is fine, rather than failing on the promise date, you ask for an extra buffer, so that at least you are able to, either you will deliver it by that date, or you will be able to deliver it before the date, but at least short timelines are always going to harm the commitments. That's what I always feel. And again, like, Indians in most of the Indian companies that I've seen is that I have a blend of working with Indian MNCs as well as the international companies both. The difference what I've seen is that fine, we will do it tomorrow. Fine, we will do it tomorrow. Fine, we will do it tomorrow. But if in case we look at some companies companies like Deutsche Bank or any other, like, big companies, they have a systematic approach of process, people, and tool and everything. So they have a stipulated timeline during which they plan and comply to do it, right? And it's a combination of everything, rather, I could say, not limited to one person. I mean, to an individual itself. But yeah, certainly security. But I'm a person who could vouch on that there is no go live without 100% security clearance.
Correct. That is exactly what I touched upon when I said that people are not ready to compromise on an iota of compliance that way. And what has also been found is in many of the Indian organizations or the innovations that are coming into picture, it is like some of those cars that are launched. For the first 1 year, you can expect a lot of tweaks into the engine or into the, mechanics of the car. It may give some noise or the brake is a difficulty or whatever. And after 1 year, it stabilizes. So probably that process refinement has not happened. So the innovation is not refined enough to reach to that level, and you have hurried and brought out that innovation. What is your take on this, Ashish? How do you see this, process of having a refined and a complied kind of innovation out into the market?
So look, as I said before, I think this takes off from the fact that are you confident about what you're building, or is what you're building a bit of an experiment? And I think the strategies for both cases is very, very different. So if what you're building is an experiment, you feel that if it works, it will be a great success, but there's a good chance it will not work. Then you go on a different path. Then you go on to a path which is more speed, certain amount of risks taken, certain amount of customer experience compromised, but speed is essential. Getting that right feedback from the customer is essential, and then deciding whether this is working or not working is essential. So I think that's a very, very different strategy. And the moment you're very confident about what you're doing, so for example, you were in a previous company where you had implemented something, it worked beautifully, you know it works. Now you move to a new company, you want to replicate that success. There's good reason why you might feel that, hey, this is not no brainer, there is no experiment in this is going to work, we just need to do it. Then you do things very, very differently. You resource it properly, you think through all risks, whether on the business side in terms of scalability, or whether on the security side in terms of vulnerability. You staff it properly, you time it properly, you give people the luxury of some time, as Vinod said, to think through all the use cases, to think through the edge cases, build robust documentation, build robust testing protocols, whether unit testing or automation testing or manual testing or whatever you do. So I think the approaches are very, very different. I think you've got to come back, and instead of saying that there is a one size fit all process that we will apply to every project, you kind of take a project and classify it into one or two or three buckets and say that, hey, these kind of projects, I am willing to take these kind of approaches. And for other projects, you might take different approaches, because we really don't. And I'll give a very, very strong example from this industry. This industry has insurance management console, the issuance system, the system of records, whatever you want to call it. That is the Bible of the company. You don't mess with the Bible, right? So there, wherever you make a change, you take it through a decent protocol. But on the front end, when you talk about customer experiences, there you might want to take a few risks. You may want to do A/B testing with 3, 4 different versions. So that's how I take it. I mean, every project I classify it, and then I figure out what's the right approach for this project.
So, according to both of you, which are the major areas where innovations are happening today in the insurance sector? Okay. Uh, where it is, very rampant now, or where it is the need of the hour to do an instant innovation now. So, which have you been observing in the last few months or in a year's time?
So, this is when we say the insurance sector, it is a service industry, and the way people approach banks, or like the number of times people log into the mobile device application to check the funds, to transfer funds, it is not that frequent for an insurance domain, right? It's a need when there is the hospitalization, when there is an emergency, right? But but banking is completely different, wherein you withdraw cash, you go for something, you go for FD, anything that you want to deal with. But insurance is kind of so. How to actually make the interaction more and more effective with the customers, or get more and more business. One is the agriculture business, the crop business, the maritime, the health insurance, the life insurance, and everything. How do we make it very much easier and simpler? So basically, one is that you have the sales model on the point of sales. Secondly, that's something that you have an online one. Third is that you have through a telecaller presence who calls someone and says that there's an insurance and you are interested. And the fourth is something like you reach out to one of the branches, and the agent is able to help you out with the least minimal information, share it with him, and he will do needful for you. The engagement factor costs a lot because there's so much competition in the market, and every time you see the scale, sometimes he goes up, sometimes he goes up, and the changes are very frequent in the market, and everyone is running behind to see how much digital it can be done. Now, for example, like giving a classic example, like one of my friends, he was traveling one day, and he saw that he was not having this e-card uh, uh, like number with him. He said, why can't we think about a situation where, like, the e-card situation solution can be embedded in my mobile itself, so that I do not have to think about it. There's an emergency, open that app, it's right in front of me, right? Expanding this particular solution towards to the agriculture area, or towards to remote areas where, like, people do not have access to laptop or a desktop. And now, for example, in today's world, mobile has become a common device which everyone has, and this is the only thing which person always carries with him. I think at least while sleeping, even you will keep it aside.
Correct.
And even when you leave home, you will ensure that even if you forget your wallet, you will ensure that your mobile, you are carrying it, because it has all the information. You can pay money through it, etc., whatever it is. So this is the right platform. So mobility is the right platform actually to build this engagement, to make a robust application available, and make it simpler to use through an app, retina scanning, to a finger swipe or anything, which could easily authenticate the information which is sitting in the backend, and provide you a one finger touch for all the solution that you're looking at. And just not insurance. Through insurance, you can have some other cross-selling as well, which will actually benefit the organization with multiple channels. You can actually give a way for other individuals even to scope up, looking at the underwriting, the people who are going on field, to see how the productivity works using the Salesforce to multiple activities which can be done. So to me, I feel that mobile is the best platform. The mobile device application is the best platform actually to get those things delivered, to get that engagement done, and to have more interaction established in the industry to scale up.
Yes, of course, it has become as a master stroke for most of the people to
Yeah.
put their innovation bucks on. And of course, that is one of the most important areas where everything is hovering around, because that is the most personalized thing that comes to anybody. Ashish, experience wise, like Vinod rightly said, experience perspective, if you see, uh, the interaction with an insurance company is going to be very limited. Okay, many health insurance companies have started looking from illness to wellness and trying to put things around wellness to the person and trying to promote them and all that. How are technologies or the technology companies, sorry, not technology company, but the technology teams try to help better these experiences to all the businesses so that they can up their revenues in a better way? And how instantly can this happen?
Yeah, so I think your this question is connected to your previous question around what is the biggest innovation happening in this industry. So I'll take both together because I think that will make sense. I think insurance is a traditional industry, and like most traditional industries, it's based on relationships, it's based on trust, it's based on physical contact, and that's fast changing. Whether you call it COVID or even pre-COVID, it's been fast changing. So fintech has always been a very touch feel kind of an industry till about 10 years ago, and then banks started leading the whole digital revolution, and now fintech has become finance has actually become fintech for most new companies. So what's happening, the biggest innovations that are happening in the domain of making every interaction engagement digital. So whether it is the sales call, if you were 20 years back and you actually said that, hey, insurance could be sold over a phone call, people would have laughed at you. But now Policy Bazaar is a multi-billion dollar company. That was my previous company with incidents. Even today for us, our own digital channel, which does telesales at Max Bupa, is by far the fastest growing channel that we have. Right. And from being a very small channel, now it is soon going to become one of the largest channels in a few years from now. Right. Similarly, if you look at experience, earlier we used to have this concept of pre-policy medical checkups where we used to send people and ask them to get their blood tests done. Now pre-policy medical checkups have all gone. It's all been converted into a digital what is called a digital tele-MER, where a doctor actually calls you, and based on your declarations, we are happy to issue your policy, and the claims will be subject to your declarations being accurate. Right. So the whole, every piece of the puzzle, whether it is sales, acquiring business, whether it is issuance and giving a policy document back to the customer, whether it is seeking more information from the customer, whether it is digital pieces in terms of engaging the customer, I think all of them is turning digital. And I think that's where maximum amount of innovation is happening. That's where maximum amount of data tracking is also happening. So now because everything is digital, you know a lot more about the customer than you would have traditionally had you just taken their forms, issued a policy, and kept that form inside a locker, because that data would have never been used. Now every piece of data across every company is digitized. So now the data is available to do analytics and drive innovative products based on the claims ratio or the demographics of the user. So I think that's where a lot of work is happening. And I think that's where the maximum amount of innovation is happening. And that's where the tech teams, along with the business users, are collaborating really, really hard to transform a customer experience. So today, anybody who wins the digital war is actually going to be the person who actually comes out on top. And we've seen this in the West, companies like Lemonade and all, insurance companies that were purely digital and just went through the roof as far as their valuations were concerned. And I think that's the story that's here to stay for the future. That's my take on innovation is actually happening.
Remote insurance is becoming a big fad now, especially with all this remote KYC happening in place and remote, technology solutions also being quite rampant in the industry. Do you see any major inroads of that into the insurance sector, or insurance sector still prefers to be high touch kind of industry here?
That's exactly what I said. I think insurance industry has always been high touch, as by the way was banking 10-15 years ago. But the consistent trend is to move away from high touch to an always on. So you are available for the customer 24/7 whenever the customer needs you, whenever the customer is free. This whole concept that, hey, sir, why don't you come to my bank branch at 6 p.m. or why don't I come to your house at 8 a.m. is just something that's going to fade away more and more. And we're seeing this, especially in the COVID period. Even our agents are sourcing their own policies digitally now through phone calls, through video calls, whatever they prefer. And I think that's the big piece. So I think, to me, what you call the remote, we call digital in our world. But the whole concept of issuing and servicing, not just issuing, by the way, not just issuing a policy, but also servicing a claim, servicing any queries that the person may have. all of this is fast moving from physical high touch to digital soft touch. In fact, within our company now, we have a matrix of no touch. So we have a no human touch, and no human touch means that somebody did not even call the customer, not even digitally did we reach out manually to the customer. So no human touch means a customer comes in, gives his declaration, his or her declaration. The declarations are fine. The policy is issued without any human being even looking at it. Right. So it's not only moved from remote to digital, sorry, physical to digital. It's actually moved now from digital to no human touch. So that evolution, I think, will continue.
Fantastic. I think that was a great perspective. So, from both your sides, is there any advice for the insurance counterparts, or people who are actually looking towards you for any advice as to how can you make innovations faster and much more? How can you fast track these innovations into the industry and also make it a fast success or fast fail, and get into the new job in case if it is a failure, and grow the businesses? Any piece of advice for the industry there?
So, shall I?
Yeah, please.
So, from my perspective, any new innovation, if we think about, we have to think about the strategy, the goal, the vision of the organization. Where do we look forward to stand with? Collaboration is very much required because working in silos is not going to bring any fruitful results. Understanding what kind of technology are we going to build it. I mean, just getting into the competition and building any innovation is not going to help it. See how the benefits can be reaped out of it. See what those changes, how those changes are going to make a business 100% fruitful organization, and always try to learn about what have been implemented, how can be reaped. Because Babu, I'm sure that any solution that you bring into industry is not going to be 100% accurate at the first instance. Anything that you launch now, for example, you gave an example of a car, right? So many launches, and after 1 year you see things are fine, but the first year there are so many problems. Even those companies learn from that first year. There's a clutch problem. There's so many cars have been called off by many big top-notch giants, right, in the industry. And with those implementations only, they learn that the suspension is stiffer, the tires are not proper, the brakes are not getting applied, the clutch problem, handling, multiple things, right? So anything, at least the final advice or suggestion from my end would be, when you are implementing, learn that solution, see where the gaps are, and fix it. It is like a SD, software development life cycle, SDLC, wherein, like, there's a life cycle of any new implementation that you do. It could be limiting to, I mean, it completely depends upon the expertise or the idea or thought process which has been used to implement that particular solution in the right channel. It could take a year's time, it may take 2 years, it may take 5 years to reap the benefit out of it. But understand the ROI, get the errors corrected, keep the solution keeping motivated, and leverage that particular solution to the larger number of groups, so that, yeah, the solution is not limited to a smaller chunk of people. Everyone uses it to the fullest, and then only it is going to help the entire organization to get the right outcome in place.
So if I encapsulate it is, basics never change. Focus always on the basics and then build your
Yeah.
innovation.
I think you're going to get two very, very divergent opinions here, because I would go the other way. I would actually say that for your BAU, do exactly what Vinod said, which is stick to very, very strong collaboration processes, risk mitigation, audit trails. But when it comes to innovation, you've got to draw a little bit outside the line. So for me, the keys to good innovation is obviously some level of collaboration to have a common goal, at least alignment with what the industry or what the company wants to do. But then a lot of freedom, a lot of decentralization, a lot of individuals taking ownership and passion to make it happen, not necessarily processes. And once the experiments are proven, then you get back, then you make it a BAU and scale it up. So to me, driving innovation is all about giving people freedom. We've seen this, and I don't know if you know this, but there are these large accelerators like Y Combinator, Y Combinator actually has a policy that they rarely fund anybody, any founder whose age is more than 30 or 32 or something like that, right? So it's not that the seniors know best. Best innovation is done by maybe younger people who have more energy, who haven't been spoiled by time into a particular process, who are willing to challenge the norm. And if your organization is too hierarchical, too structured, where the junior guys or the new guy's job is only to look up to his senior and say, hey, what do I need to do? Please tell me. And the guy does it. I don't think innovation will work. Because if you believe in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, guys who have joined my team recently, who are probably 15, 17 younger to me, are probably more intelligent than I am. They have been bought in a digital age. They've been brought up in a digital age. So they have had access to mobile from their youngest possible memory, whereas all of us have had a mobile, when we were probably in college or in our first job.
You're working that.
20 plus.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the whole point. So the point is now somebody who's digitally native, who as a child even got his entertainment on his iPad, is probably more qualified than you, me, humbly Vinod, to actually drive innovation and change. So why block him? So for me, it's all about freedom, giving people that mantle of ownership, having some control mechanisms that it doesn't go out of whack and people don't do crazy stuff. Uh, so therefore, limiting the scale that that person is allowed to do without processes in place. But once at that small scale things begin to work, then you bring in all processes in to ensure that the scaling up happens in a structured manner.
Do all these sandboxes do a good job on this, at least helping you to fail successfully and rethink on a successful story according to you? Have you had any experiences in that?
Yes, of course. I mean, look, typically what happens is if you look at, let's say, the IIDA sandbox, which has been coming up, is available in some shape or form. Sandboxes can help. I mean, in our industry, it's not helped that much so far, but they can help because what they do is typically this industry moves very slow. And most regulated industries have a tendency to move slow, right? So what sandboxes help you do is they help you anticipate what's going to happen 1.5, 2 years down the line. And therefore you can start work on them much earlier and start thinking about them much earlier. And hopefully your 1.5 year investment is going to be in the right direction. There's a very good chance, you'll invest a massive amount of money in a particular direction and then suddenly have a rude shock saying that, hey, suddenly something's come up. So I think sandboxes are very powerful. They could help. I don't think they've helped the industry yet in a very big way. But I'm a firm believer that at some stage they will.
Fantastic. Excellent. Vinod, any perspective to add before we
No,
go?
it's the same thing. I mean, what I vouch on what Ashish said. Sandboxes are not much mature at this moment. People are still inclined towards to do with the bots, the AI, the ML, and everything. But it will take some time for the sandboxes to actually get into that maturity level. And certainly in the insurance and especially when I say the fintech one, it's not come to that maturity level. It will require some kind of more educational built-in container building and everything can be done only to bring that maturity level to that level.
Excellent. So thanks for that wonderful conversation, both of you. I think I could learn quite a lot of interesting things right from what kind of collaboration, what kind of integration of the entire technology and business teams is required to come together and always brainstorm, agree to disagree, and then finally agree to make sure that there is an insta reach of your or insta launch of your products and services. And I liked the point as to basically try to learn to lose first, in the sense, if there is a first also understand if there is a failure, recognize it fast, work on it, and then get back to it, and use all those possible mechanisms like sandboxes or things like that to make sure that you plan your compliance, strongly compliant, strongly secure, strongly regulated launches and products and services, and make it as instant as possible. And at the same time, shortcuts are good, but shortcuts are not advisable. At the same time, you also need to take chances, and you need to make sure that everything does not go always in a straight line. Some things can also go a little away from the track, but at the end of the day meet the objective, because objectives have to be kept. Uh, Probably that is the first and foremost thing that has to be kept into the mark, and things can be followed. Great. I think I had a wonderful conversation with both of you. Uh,
Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolute pleasure, Babu.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.